Who taught you that? Who taught you that? Where did you learn that from? A lot of times when it comes to, I'm going to say kids, when it comes to children, when it comes to individuals, even when it comes to like young adults and even you, when there is a either undesirable behavior or either let's say a child does something, it's like, oh, they got it from the parents. And some of that is true, and some of that is not always true. And so, you, as a 40 plus entrepreneur, 40 plus woman, where did you get that from? Where did you learn that from? And a lot of it we do get from our experience. All of it doesn't always come from those early years, but a lot of it does. It really does. And it doesn't always come from the experience itself. A lot of times it comes from your interpretation, the meaning, the messages that you get from the experience. It's more so that than anything. So not only do your beliefs come from your parents, your upbringing, but it comes from your environment. So that means when it comes to school, when it comes to people you hang around with, and then as we're grown, pretty much it's how you interpret the world. Those are, I'm going to say, it's the accumulation of your experience of how you interpret the world, how you view through the lenses that. And so that's where a lot of your beliefs come. And also, when it comes to your belief, is that it can be altered by experiences. Those are different from when it comes to your principles, when it comes to the things that you live by. And a lot of times, because someone believe you feel strongly or passionate about something, that's your belief, and that's not always true, because your beliefs can waver, but your principles won't. But today I want to talk about your beliefs. Your beliefs can be like an expectation that you have of yourself, of others, your beliefs. Some of it can be your values. Generally, you can say your principles and your values are equal per se. And I would like to say when it comes to your values, things can get added to it similar to your principles. But when it comes to your principles, they don't change, they don't waver no matter what. And it makes, I want to say, it's not easy. It doesn't make your life easy when it comes to principles, but it can definitely make life less difficult. But let's get back to your belief. Now, one belief that I've had, and I realized later in life, it was faulty. I needed to pretty much take hold of it, and it needed some change. And that belief was, if I'm a blessing to others, if I'm a blessing, I'm blessed and I'm a blessing to others. And most people was like, well, there's nothing wrong with that belief, but it is. It can be faulty because you're not always using wisdom. You're not always using discernment, because no one is here to bless everyone that comes into your category. Yes, we want to be good and do well, but you cannot leave yourself out. Now, where I got that belief from was my mom. She pretty much really did feel like when because she's blessed, that she could bless others. But let me tell you, one thing she also believed in is that you don't give your last, that you do not suffer. And I'm like, wait a minute, where did I miss that part at? And I don't think that I missed it, but one thing that I will say, and this was a lesson that I learned about, if I'm blessed, being a blessing to others. And later on, I learned that can't be a blessing to everyone, that I get to have authority and I have agency of how I use my resources. That's where the free will come into play in that. But what I learned, there was a couple lessons that I've learned. One, I learned that I can't leave myself out of the equation, that I cannot be suffering. Yes, there are different types of how you can be blessed when you give your last. And I'm just going to say, just use discernment when it comes to that. It's like, make sure it's not even your belief, your faith is really tight. And I'm not saying I didn't have that, because there's a difference each situation. And so you don't leave yourself, behind. You don't leave yourself suffering. You know what I'm saying? It's like pour into your own cup. And especially if people, places, or things are draining you, that's the thing. Because I was still thinking, oh, I know that there is a lesson in here for me. There was a lesson. The lesson was me. You know what I'm saying? And what about you? Let's just pause there for a moment. What about you? What beliefs do you have that you realized that you needed to change? And where did that belief come from? You know what I'm saying? Because again, my mom's belief wasn't faulty. I can say I wasn't paying not any attention. I wasn't paying close attention, but there was another level to that lesson that I learned as well. There's another level to that. So the first lesson was, do not leave yourself behind. Be in alignment. I was out of alignment with myself. I was out of alignment. I wasn't honoring my own principles. I wasn't honoring myself. Ooh, that's it right there. Are you honoring yourself? You cannot self-sacrifice yourself by trying to be good to others, more so be nice to others. Because just because you have it, it doesn't mean you need to, one, give it away or give it to person, a certain person, place, or thing. It doesn't always mean that, because y'all, sometimes the lesson, there are hidden lessons. I'm going to say that. Sometimes the lesson isn't in the giving. Ooh, the lesson is in the restraint, is you of having that impulse to give. Oh my gosh. All these downloads, y'all. All these downloads. Again, there are lessons, because if you are an entrepreneur, you cannot be like just giving away all of your products, giving away all your services, giving away everything for free or less than the price that it needs to be. Oh, you see? Ooh. Y'all, these are just downloads. These are just downloads. You see where I'm going? So that was a very valuable lesson, because it's your ability to assert yourself, your ability to say no, your ability to look at your resources and say, hey, how is this benefiting me? Not just in the giving, because it wasn't benefiting me even emotionally, even in the giving. Because like most time when you give, you feel good. It's not even about, it's like, oh, when I'm just giving, hey, I got, and I'm going to bless others, and I'm just going to give. You got to feel good about it some kind of way. You know what I'm saying? And this is not being selfish. Okay, so the first lesson was, not to be drained by the giving, because people can appreciate something and they can be appreciative, but are they showing appreciation? Everybody doesn't need to do that, but I will say certain people will. And I wish I knew which talk that it was, but I know that Eric Thomas, he talks about this. He talks about this as well. about being reciprocal, is he was saying that that was a lesson that he had to learn. I know he's talked about it in a sermon, but he's also talked about it on the Secret to Success podcast. And y'all need to make sure you listen to that, and especially entrepreneurs, really anybody. But if you got a calling, you got a purpose or mission, listen to that, because that is nothing but a personal development, self-development podcast. So make sure you listen to that. And so the thing is, it's not being selfish, because, and I'm going to say this, it doesn't mean like when I give, I'm like, oh, I wonder what I can get out of that person. No, it's not that. It's really like, for the most part, don't even think about it. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, if the person is still in need, or if the person continue to ask for favors, to ask for the thing, I always like to say a cup of water, then sometimes it's like, So again, you should not be drained emotionally, physically, or financially. So let's get that. Giving should not drain you. So if it's draining you in some form or fashion, that is a signal for you to re-examine either why you're giving or who you're giving it to. Now, the second lesson is, so that means again, it's you, because I was depleting my own, light. I was depleting my own light by giving. So again, that is where that belief was faulty. Because it doesn't mean you give to everybody. It doesn't mean you give to every cause. Because if it's your energy, it could be your time, or it could be your money, whatever resource, because your energy is a resource for you as well. Now, the second, I guess you could say, lesson that I learned, that I saw later on, and this lesson came about later. I want to say I even came about this lesson and you have revelations at different times, you know what I mean? So this lesson came about, I'd say probably a few years after that experience, several years after that experience. But the second lesson that I've learned, and I see it, and pretty much what we'll say this, pretty much what made me even see it clear, because when I'm working with clients and I see their suffering, like, oh, I get it. There is something about when people are in our proximity, emotional or physical proximity. And when I say emotional, it can be a family member, it can be someone we consider as a friend, or it can be, an intimate partner, meaning, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, you're married, or a committed relationship. It can be one of those things. And with the physical proximity, I'm not talking about, sex. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about intimacy, not in that way. Physical proximity, how the saying goes, your life, however your life is about the 5 people that you have in your environment. So it's pretty much from that perspective, meaning people are physically around you. And so there's something about, let's say people that you work with, people that you consider your friends, that are physically around you, or it can be family for some of you, that there is something about, again, emotional and physical proximity that almost makes our radar, it's like it decreases the radar. You know what I mean? It decreases your radar, increases your blind spots that you're not able to see, which is the reason why it's good to, quote unquote, seek counsel. And I'm going to say follow the counsel that you seek, um, because of the fact you will still be pretty much having a internal war because you can't blame the person because they're getting their needs met. Their needs met is that cup of water. You know what I'm saying? But it's draining you. Your well will run dry. So, again, the first lesson is when you are giving, and if it drains you, you got to go deep within yourself. Go several layers deep. And it's like, what is this? Why am I feeling drained? I should feel good just by giving. There is something, it may not even be the person, itself, but there is a message in that. And that was something that I had to do because I'm like, what's going on here? And then that's when I realized I wasn't given to myself. It wasn't even about the cup of water that I wasn't given to, that I was given to the other person. It was the cup of water that I wasn't given to myself. Let's say we're digging, but are you digging a well or are you digging a ditch? So that is so important when it comes to giving. Going back to individuals who are in emotional or physical proximity, for whatever reason, it's like all of our senses just go out the window sometimes. We'll say sometimes, not always. But once you learn this lesson, then one, you will feel more comfortable and it retrains your nervous system because half of the time when you're given, sometimes it could be people pleasing and the inability to say no, or you're not wanting to feel bad. That's a you issue. That's not the person who's asking issue. You may want them to stop asking, but no, you set that boundary, but this is where you may need to look at your faulty belief because there was a time and I'm like, because I really do enjoy giving. That was probably the only time in my life that I was questioning my giving because I'm like, no, because I truly believe that if I am blessed, I can be a blessing to others. But what I learned was that I got to make sure I am blessing myself. You can say, oh, we're sharing. If you bless, then you are blessing myself. But meaning that I truly benefit from the blessing that I have. That I'm not drained. I'm not out of alignment. I'm able to be authentic in the giving, not where there's stipulations on the giving. I've realized, sometimes I put it like this, not unless you got allergies or something. Other than that, no, 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 no. Because this may be all that I have to give when it comes to emotional capacity, physical capacity, meaning if there's any physical work that you may need to do, and financial capacity is like, no matter what you got in the bank account, you get to decide how much either needs to remain in your bank account or how much you're able to give. But again, when it comes to emotional and physical proximity, just be aware that that can pretty much play a part in your decision, you know? In your decision, meaning that your radar, like I'm not saying that you need to be, like on guard. I'm not saying that at all. But what I am saying, like there is a level of trust for individuals that you consider to be a friend, someone you consider to be at least a decent, colleague, or someone that you collaborate with. But again, as an entrepreneur, if you do not learn how to pretty much divvy out your resources, then it's not that you would just be broke when it comes to the money, but you can be broken and you're blaming other people because it's how you see, it's your perception, it's your belief. And that's where we need to step back and say, where did this belief come from? You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, with the belief of if I'm blessed, I'm a blessing to others, I got that from my mom. Now, anything else related to that, it's my interpretation or the ability, one, to say no, the ability to be able to say, ooh, I need to withdraw my resources. And as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, there are times you may need to withdraw a contract. You see what I'm saying? All of this is self care, y'all. All of this is building up, having the confidence, being comfortable in what you stand on, be comfortable on your own non negotiable. And so, with that, I would say the third lesson that I learned from I'm gonna call it more so. It's not, even though it came from the experience, but it was more so the lessons of that belief. The third thing that I learned is I had to change how I saw that belief, where I'm like, oh, it is okay for me to give to myself. Not that I didn't believe it, but what I realized that I am just really naturally a person who gives. And so in saying that, sometimes I just need to pause and kind of going back to the emotional and physical proximity, going back to that, the other part of that is that sometimes I'm going to say this, and I've always said this, but this is another lesson that I had to learn because I was talking to a friend about this one time, and that, like, sometimes it's easier to, let's say, set limits or boundaries on people over the fence. You know what I'm saying? It's so much easier because there's really not a emotional attachment to that. Because someone that you consider a friend, there is emotional attachment, whether you believe it or not. Anytime somebody think about emotional, they think about intimacy, not in that way. It's like when it comes to platonic friends, when it comes to, just friendship in and of itself, there is a caring. I'm gonna put it like that. There is a caring for another individual, but not in a intimacy or SES type of way. And so with that, it's pretty much insane. It's like, oh, when people, it's kind of like, it's so easy to give to the world. That is really easy, to be honest. But when people come into your circle, let's say, you're in the circle, and there's different levels to the circle, but as people get closer to your circle, there is a difference. And there are expectations, because the expectation is, I am a friend to you. I expect you to be a friend to me. Now, once you realize that, now it's up to you whether or not you're going to continue to give, and if you're not expecting anything. And so that was something that I had to work on, is really the ability to recognize, no, I'm gonna reword that. I had to give myself permission that it is okay to say no, even if I have it, that it's okay to withdraw my resources. It is okay for that to happen. Oh, with sorry there. Uh-oh. Sorry there. TikTok. Anyway, we had a interruption there, but it is okay. And a part of becoming the CEO, the part of being, an entrepreneur, is the ability to say no, the ability to set boundaries, and sometimes knowing when you need to withdraw a contract, when you need to exit a collaboration. Now, with that, it comes communication along with it as well. Yeah, there may be some people you can ghost, but it is not okay to ghost, when you're an entrepreneur. Say what needs to be said and move on. You know what I'm saying? Make that decision. And so again, that's the pretty much the gist. There's so many different things that can kind of go into when it comes to emotional and physical proximity. But just know that they can kind of taint your discernment. So you really need to sit with yourself to kind of figure out where all of this is coming from. Why are you giving? And if you are expecting something, you know what I'm saying? And what I'm saying is the closer that people are in your circle, you know, there is a level of expectation. There should be, it should be reciprocal if I need it. I'm not banking on it, per se. Again, when I was giving, I wasn't banking on, oh, well, I'm just going to give because, I expect something. It's just that when something came up in my life and I needed something, I expected the person to be able to help me out, to provide some resources, just generally talking or whatsoever. It's like what that need is, not to say they need to go circles around me and dance and or anything like that, but no. And so the other part, what I'm saying too, or if you are a type of person who is, even if you are in need, that you're always asking, and even though you're going through something and you're not able to give, just stop asking. You know what I'm saying? It may sound cold or whatsoever, but you may not know how much you may be draining that person. Because the other thing is that your cup is not even being filled either, but that's another conversation. That's another conversation. But the main thing is that you have the ability to be true to yourself and you honor that. You honor you because I wasn't honoring myself. I was draining myself. How much you may want to blame the other person, but a lot of times it's you, y'all. And so, as an entrepreneur, when it comes to your beliefs, look at your beliefs. Look at the expectations that you may have. Now, yes, some people may not be able to give, and that's okay. But seriously, if your giving is draining, then maybe you don't need to give. Maybe you need to look at that, you know? But the thing that I did is that I had to change my perception of giving, that one, it's okay not to give to everyone, even if they have a need. I just may not be the person. Because the other thing is sometimes the lesson isn't in the giving. Sometimes the lesson could be what you do in that moment in time. Are you able, you know, to set boundaries? Can you put the bar up? But it's about you learning your discernment. And when I recognized that I wasn't giving to myself, that I was being drained of giving, I'm like, oh, okay, that was the lesson. The lesson wasn't even me giving. I would say like maybe the first or the second or the third time in giving. Because I've always kind of been, okay, three times, I don't know, you're gonna have to figure it out. Because in the end, and if you listen to Ayana, she talks about, being a helper and being support, and she really breaks that down. You know what I'm saying? Because sometimes you can really be hurting the other person by you giving, I don't even want to say giving, by you sharing your resources, um there's so much to be told by that. But when I really thought about it even harder, I was like, yeah, my mom, she never, gave where she was going to be depleted emotionally or financially or lack of resources. And I would say the first part is what I missed, that I didn't get, you know. But either way, it's something that you have to learn. Some people are just naturally that way. I would just like to say, like for those of you who may be more hypersensitive and who do have a given heart, just watch yourself. It may not be your job to give everybody. It could be where by you declining to give, it allows them to step up and say what other things that they need to work on. Maybe they need to go in a different direction. I can think about actually with one example that I have, I can remember, I'm just going to generally say a relative had asked for a favor. And at that particular time, I wasn't able to honor the favor. And, I might have come across, oh, I can't do that or something. And in the back of my mind, to be honest, and I'm like, well, if they circle back around, I see what I can do. But at that particular time, I was emotionally drained from giving. I had to recruit myself from that. You know what I mean? So sometimes you may not know what state that a person is, even though from outer appearance, they may seem like that they have the resource that you're requesting, but emotionally, they just may not have the capacity to give. And so again, it can come across, in a certain way. And I'm still learning. What about you all? What is a lesson that you like? What is a belief that you had, but then you realize later that, oh, that you needed to pretty much had to change that belief, because if you're caring more about others and their feelings and you don't want them down and out, but you're down and out, you know what I mean? No, 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 no. So again, I had to give myself permission to be okay with giving to myself. And then another thing is I had to give myself permission to pretty much not only to give to myself, to be okay to withdraw my resources. That is the thing I had the hardest part with. And I'm going to see if I can find Eric Thomas when he talked about this, because he talked about where he, like was praying to God, pretty much for additional resources for, let's say, more oil. And God was like, I gave you oil, but he was like, but I'm giving my oil to the people. And God was like, I didn't tell you to give your oil away. They have their oil too. You see what I'm saying? Ooh. Mm-mm-mm. They have their or too, and that's what sometimes we end up forgetting. Even though it can be very emotional, you can have empathy and even sympathy for someone because they are in need, but you may not be the person who comes to the giving because of the fact sometimes for some individuals they may need to either find it in themselves to get the resources. I mean, that's true, or find another person, for the resource. But at the end of the day, we got to find our own resource. We got to develop our own resources, period. And so make sure when you are giving yourself permission, one, to give to yourself, give yourself permission to be able to set limits, to be able to withdraw your resources when it's necessary. Because in business, there will be a time for you to be able to do that. And the saying is, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And even though sometimes it can be some differences, I'm going to say, when it comes to business and personal, but the core of who you are, meaning if you are a people pleaser, Let's say, for instance, that when it comes to negotiating deals, when it comes to connecting and collaborating, and that you may have difficulty in speaking up for yourself because you're worried about how you're going to come across, or you want to seem like that you're being selfish, that you may be charging, in your eyes, you may be charging too much. But if you do not develop your own voice to be able to articulate what it is that you do, what it is, like where you're coming from, then you are depleting yourself. You're making yourself to be out of alignment. So I was making myself be out of alignment. You know what I'm saying? So look at your belief to see, is your belief tainted? Because even with being, if you're blessed and you're a blessing to others, it doesn't mean that you are a blessing to every single person. And once you see something, and it could just be, it may not even be the other person, it could just be you're just emotionally depleted. You have nothing else to give, and it's okay. And so it's okay. Give yourself permission to be able to withdraw your resources. Because if you're not able to do that, you're going to be broke. And when I say broke, I'm not just talking about emotionally. You're going to be broke. I mean, I'm not talking about just financially. You're going to be broke emotionally and even physically, because what goes on with you emotionally, it impacts you physically. It drains you. You feel it in your body anyway. You know what I'm saying? So and so and so and so. I'd like to hear from you all. Let me know in the comments what resonated with you, because we've all been there. We've all been there where we've given, 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 given. Not that you're expecting something, but for people who are closer in your circle, where there is a emotional and a physical proximity, there is an expectation. I would just say there's an expectation of when you need something, that you would like for them to be able to reciprocate a favor. And it's okay for that. You know what I mean? So again, if this resonated with you, let me know in the comment what resonated. And if this message can benefit someone else, make sure you share. Because we want, in order to become the best version of ourselves is through our experiences, and sometimes to upgrade our beliefs. So I like to know what belief that you had to upgrade, because if not, you would be drained. But anyway, I will see you all next time.